Hi everyone, welcome to our devotion for Tuesday, March 23rd. This is part 1 of the story we're going to read here out of Mark 14. It's just one verse today, verse 3. While Jesus was at Bethany in the house of Simon the leper, as he sat at the table, a woman came with an alabaster jar of very costly ointment of nard, and she broke open the jar and poured the ointment on his head. And that's where we're going to stop today. We'll read more about this story tomorrow. But there are so many fascinating things going on. So Bethany is a little town just north of Jerusalem. And we read about that a lot, that Jesus stayed in Bethany every time that he came down to Jerusalem. Evidently had friends there. Simon, we're told, is called Simon the leper. At one point in his life, he must have had some skin disease that earned him this nickname, which I'm sure he did not like, but it somehow stuck, even if he is now past his skin disease, which he must be because he's in a house and he is able to accept guests and people and be around other people. And if you had leprosy or this other skin conditions, you were not allowed to do that in these communities. So this has to be a nickname that I'm sure he didn't like. Maybe even something from childhood, right? Some of you might have your childhood nickname that has stuck with you longer than you really wanted it to. And so that's Simon the leper. And as Jesus sat at Simon's table, a woman came in and poured this perfume over his head. Can you imagine? Can you imagine being part of this, right? Can you imagine sitting at dinner as a guest in somebody else's house and a stranger comes in, not even somebody of that household, complete stranger comes into the house and pours a gallon of perfume on your head? I mean, what would even be your reaction? It would get everywhere. It would splash all over the table. It would completely coat your clothes. Everything about you, it would get in your nose. You would smell only that for the rest of your natural life, right? Everything about that would just be overwhelming. It would run into your eyes. It would run down your face. It would coat the ground. Everything about that would be overwhelming. And can you imagine being Simon? Here you are. You've got this funky nickname that you don't really like, but you're hosting this fairly important celebrity from out of town. I'm sure your house is filled with people, right? Because wherever Jesus went to dinner, he brought along not just his 12 closest friends, but his 70 to 80 closest friends, right? This isn't just one guy over for dinner. This is a block party. This is a citywide party going on at Simon's house. And this stranger comes in and she breaks open this bottle and she makes a terrible mess out of everything. How would you even react to that? What would even be the right thing to do? Right? You can't get mad at her. You're trying to host this event. Do you call the police? What are the police going to do? Right? Police don't usually come equipped with mops and buckets. Right? Do you call your servants in to clean it up? But how do you even clean that up when most likely your floor is a dirt floor? Right? It would seep into everything. The smell of this would be with you forever. You would never get it out. Right? Or could you imagine being the woman? And that's our devotion talks about today, right? This unnamed woman who feels such love and devotion and commitment that she takes this bottle, this jar, we are told, and pours it over Jesus's head. And when we look at this tomorrow, we'll look at some of the motivations behind this. But can you just imagine for a moment being that committed, being that dedicated to who Jesus is, and to knowing that you have a role and a part and a purpose in Jesus' story? And I challenge you that because that's the true part, right? You're not Jesus. You don't get that to happen to you a lot. I've never had it happen to me, and I'm kind of thankful that I haven't, because I don't really like the smell of perfume very much less that much. And you're not Simon, at least not always. You don't get to host these great big parties. Usually, when we host people, it's just family, maybe friends, although we haven't done that in about a year. But we very rarely welcome strangers into our houses. That might be something we have to talk about at some point, of how that actually works and how it's supposed to work. But we're not Jesus, we're not Simon, but maybe we're that woman who's supposed to be that dedicated to Jesus's life and work that it takes an abundance of who we are and what we have to be part of Jesus's story in our world today. So when was the last time you figuratively poured the oil out for somebody? When was the last time you went overboard to do something good for someone else? Do you remember it? Do you remember doing that? Do you remember how it made you feel? Do you remember how it made someone else feel? Especially if it wasn't your own family? Like, it's easy to go overboard buying birthday presents or Christmas presents for your kids, or for your parents, or for the people you love. But what about for the people you don't know? What about the strangers? When have you gone overboard to do something good for a stranger, for somebody you don't know? Right? Think about that. Think about that. And maybe this week, maybe it's time, if you haven't done that in a while, maybe it's time for you to think about that. Maybe it's time for you to make plans, right? Like this woman, to buy the jar, maybe even to make the ointment, right? To prepare this. Maybe it's time for you to make the plans, to go overboard for the grace of somebody else. Because there's a lot of people that need a lot. There's a lot of good that can be done in the world, and you and I are called to be part of it. We are part of Jesus' story. Maybe today is the day that you find a time and a place to go overboard of grace for somebody else. Let's conclude with our prayer. Awaken holy passion in our hearts, O Lord, that overwhelmed with love, we may give ourselves to you and be transformed in your likeness. Amen. God bless you today.